Virtual Palooza, welcome to our masterclass. This one is focusing on strategies that charities are employing to pivot in this funky day and age. Our two guests today have been, between them, pivoted multiple galas and fundraisers in the past few months, and so they're positioned perfectly to give us these practical tips on how we could do the same. The VP and co-founder of Imagine a Way, who helps families afford the cost of treatment of autism, and a 15-year veteran of the benefits and fundraising industry who has raised more than $115 million in Central Texas. Putting the fun in fundraising, please welcome from Fun Auctions, Gail Stallings, and from Imagine a Way, Caroline Price. How are you guys? Thank you so much for joining us.
Doing great. Thank you, Dave.
This is going to be fun. Let's do it.
Let's do it. That's exactly right. So, Carolyn, first up, I'm going to ask you a really quick, what is Imagine a Way?
Imagine a Way is a nonprofit that was established to help families that have children diagnosed with autism, help them afford the therapies that are so often so expensive and difficult to obtain if you find yourself kind of caught in the gap. If you don't have access to insurance, we help bridge that gap and get the children the critical therapies that they need at the most critical moment in time, early on in their early childhood development.
That's amazing. And as I don't think we've ever discussed this, but as someone who has a sibling with autism, I very much appreciate everything that you guys are doing. And, it's an important cause and something that's close to my heart as well, for sure. Gail, tell me about how Fun Auctions came about.
Oh, Dave, that's a long story.
We've got all day. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you how my relationship with Imagine a Way started.
Let's do that.
So so I believe Carolyn, you were at the Gala, Joel and you, and I remember the one you were at. And Joel came up to me after, because they were thinking of doing their first gala.
That is right.
And then came up and said, wow, you were able to sell air up there and you really didn't have anything to sell. I said, yeah, that's my job. I sell air. And so we've been together 10 years.
Wow.
Yep, we have. Yep.
10 years. That's incredible. My husband always used to say, he could sell ice to Eskimos. I feel like that's you. Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to start to split these questions a little bit, but we're going to take a similar format to what we've been taking for all of our masterclasses, and we're going to talk high-level, 30,000-foot view about objectives. So, Caroline, we'll start with you. With Imagine a Way specifically, how have objectives in the age of COVID changed or shifted?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that if you consider the finite objective, I wouldn't say that's changed, right? The objective is to raise funds so that we can continue to do the work that we're doing in Central Texas and make sure that we don't have any interruption in services for the families that we're able to take care of right now. And so it's placed a really critical emphasis on our identification of how we can continue to do that when we can't meet in person. And for us as an organization, our primary fundraising mechanism comes through our gala. Certainly the shift is how do we still meet and continue to meet the objective of raising those funds when the ability to meet in person is no longer available to us. But outside of that, the main objective is to raise the money.
Yeah, and that's great. As an organization, I feel like that's been the answer quite a lot. Organizational objectives haven't changed, but when you start to drill down to like an individual event objective, for instance, that's where things start to shift a little bit. So that's a really interesting observation there. Gail, across the board, you've got a bunch of clients that you work with from a fundraising and gala perspective. How have you seen things shift from an objectives perspective out there in the market?
Well, it's like Carolyn said, now more than ever, they're going to need these funds. And so it's not just Central Texas. I'm looking at trends all across the country. And that day, March 7th for me was the last day of my last live event. And we knew that the day before, South by Southwest was canceled. So by the next week, that's when all the calls started coming in, and I started calling the nonprofits that were scheduled in the spring to say, do we delay? Do we cancel? Do you postpone? We had that conversation with Imagine Away probably in April. And I was very upfront and said, basically, we're throwing the rule book out. What we know of doing a gala is we're going to put that aside for now. And we're going to be creating our own new best practices. Virtual galas are not going away. They are going to be here 6 months, 9 months, or as I listen in committee meetings, until folks start feeling comfortable gathering in a large group again. So this is a time now more than ever where you can really do a mission-driven program, and you're going to really show how you're serving your clients.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were talking about essentially not having a finite end point for when we're suddenly going to be able to be back together. And I think that's a source of anxiety for a lot of people.
Yes.
But it's also, I think, a source of comfort when once you've gotten into the swing and understand what's out there in the market, you feel a little bit more comfortable in this virtual environment. It almost resolves those feelings for you, because it's like we're going to be here for a while. And I think the new normal for events, for galas and all that kind of thing, is that there will be some kind of virtual component for the foreseeable future, if not from now until the end of time, because I think it's now shown us that we can, and therefore, should we always be doing it for those who cannot make it, for the fact that we now have infinite reach, for the reasons, that we now break down borders. Are these all reasons for us to continue down this virtual path, even as we can start to come together a little bit more? So I think all of those are just really interesting observations and things to think about. Let's turn our eyes to technology. So this has been, I think, for pretty much everyone that we've interviewed so far, usually a similar answer, but how do we see technology as an opportunity to do something that hasn't been done before versus a challenge? Are there practical ways that you guys have tried to change your thinking in order to frame it as an opportunity? Gail, let's start with you.
Okay, so first let me say, I have never appreciated an AV production team understands live streaming. I bow to you guys now. It is just an incredible responsibility. But the good thing is there are organizations, there's companies like ATX Event Systems that know how to do this. And so my first, I was going to say, you got to partner with your AV live stream team like now, if you are doing a fall event. But what I'm seeing with the technology, I really say there's a silver lining in this, because organizations are saying they can go beyond the ballroom doors. They might have had 350 in the ballroom. And I had an event, it was my first one. We had 1,100 people online.
Wow.
On a Sunday night. And then because it was recorded and sent out with the donation email that I got 5 minutes after the event was over, that it had more than 10,000 views. More donor engagement than ever, more new donors. Sponsors loved this broad exposure, 10,000 views. They're also seeing it doesn't take as much lead time on some things. You used to need a year.
Careful what you say there, Gail.
Well, I'm going to preface.
She said on some things.
Some things. I've never had to do more rehearsals in my life than right now. But that's the part that, you have to invest in that, but you're not looking at the hotels and the food, and this is from, the development standpoint. So you do need to invest your time in how do we create this really mission-driven program. Oh, and don't forget, you got to check out what is the mobile bidding technology too.
Mm-hmm.
That is a whole nother, aspect of this.
Yeah, I think what's super interesting about what you said is that it's not just physical borders that have broken down. The borders of time have kind of been broken down as well. So the reach of a gala evening might have been 4 or 5 hours, and you'd get what you get in that 4 or 5 hours. You might be able to extend some silent auction items or something like that beyond. But now what we're seeing is we can open up silent auctions a week before. We can continue to accept donations as people are still tuning in 3 weeks after the event. So it's now this upended opportunity of, now we can talk to 1,100 people instead of 300. Now we can talk to them for 3 weeks instead of 3 hours. That changes the dynamic a little bit, So, Caroline.
Let me follow up with that.
Please.
And on that one event, 60% of new donors came from outside of Texas.
Wow.
So that is, and we're still trying to gather data. Everyone is scrambling as fast as they can, but that just blew my mind when I heard that.
Actually, that point's a good one as well. The data that you can receive from an event now and help you analyze post-event, during an event, is insane. I was talking with Scott from Invent on another masterclass, and his parts of his company deal with big data and analyzing and understanding and forming new strategies based on the data that we have. And as an event community, we've had access to some data, but I think the possibilities are huge, not just in the virtual world, in the physical world as well. But obviously right now, this virtual environment, we can shift conversations. We can understand what people are talking about. We can understand why they came, where they came from, how old they are, the breakdown and the understanding of your audience, and therefore how you continue to engage with them after your event. I think is so much more informed. And that's a huge, huge, huge opportunity that technology has given us now as well. All right, Caroline, I'm going to pass this over to you. From an Imagine a Way specifically perspective, how have you seen technology, or how's it shifted in your mind to an opportunity rather than a challenge?
It's done it in a number of ways. Certainly, I think the point that Gala has already made to extend the reach beyond just the people that were in the room historically, and have them be a part of the event when it takes place is, that's tremendous. And we're, certainly we haven't done ours yet, so we're anticipating what this is going to do, but we're very excited about the opportunity of being able to get out to so many more people. I mean, me personally, I won't be in the state of Texas the night of the event. I'll actually be somewhere else participating from a completely different place. And so, and it's really exciting to think about what that's going to bring to the table. It also has extended our reach in terms of in entertainment that we're looking to engage and bring people into the program that I think would have historically been completely outside of our reach, or we just never would have even considered to conduct that outreach. But because it's in a virtual environment, it's just opened us up to so many different, ways of thinking and just, blowing the lid off of it. So I think it's been great. It's scary. We've got 3 new technologies that in the last 2 months we have engaged with. And so that certainly has caused a lot. I mean, there are so many more meetings and so many more decisions that have to be made. And you just have to think very differently about how you produce the event and ensure the continuity and the experience just goes off without a hitch. So, there's a lot more that goes into the planning process when it's so new and so different, where we were pretty much in our zone, if you will, with the in-person event, with the technology. You really do, like Gail was saying about she's doing so many more rehearsals. Well, we're having so many more conversations around, from the beginning of the event to the end of the event, minute by minute, what is it going to look like? Dave, you clearly have been a part of those conversations, from a production standpoint. But even then, from the beginning of the fundraising experience, that looks completely different for us this year. So everything is, it's just different, but it takes a lot of time, and you have to be willing to invest that time and that energy so that hopefully you have the greatest possible outcome when it's all said and done.
Well, for sure. Let's drill down into that a little bit. So moving into specific strategies and steps. You were talking about how things are different. How are they different? Tell us a little bit about what has shifted and what's changed for you and how you're dealing this year.
So, it starts with the emphasis that we had placed historically on engaging our prospective donors. We relied very heavily on our board members to go out and conduct, and we still will. Hopefully you can't hear my dogs barking, sorry. We still will require that, that engagement, but now it's not just the night of the event. So we instituted technology to create table captains to help fundraise in advance of the event. It's not something we had done historically. We had our captains, if you will, that were inviting people and engaging them to participate that night. But now we have to do something, in advance. So we've got to plan that. We have to get that out. We have to get the messaging out. Then there's this whole concept of a watch party or, the attendance at the event. And so now you're inviting people to host micro parties in their home, in micro ways for people to engage, but then all still come together the night of the event. And so you have that planning process that exists. Then we have the meetings to go through step by step. What is the event going to look like the night of, and who, what do we pre-record? What do we do live? How do we interact with the software? And so, every single one of these are pieces of the event that we have to spend time on, and we have to develop around those things that look very different than when we were doing the program in person.
Yeah, and funnily enough, I learned a very new term 2 days ago, I think it was, quarantine. You're on my quarantine. Have you heard this?
Oh, nice.
So these are the people that are in your immediate family or your very, very close circle of friends who you trust enough to have your mask off of around. So, those watch parties with your quarantine, that's kind of what we were talking about there, where you have, instead of a table of 10 in a ballroom somewhere, you have a table of 10 in someone's private home where they can tune in and watch together. And you can still have that physical interaction. You can still eat together, enjoy each other's company. Through technology, we can connect different watch parties or bring them into the show. So there are new and different ways that we can engage with all of these different new ideas that bring the connectivity back. Gail, I'm going to turn it over to you from a strategies and specific steps perspective. I guess let's talk about you in particular first, and then let's talk about what you've heard from the industry. What's changed?
Let's see. I belonged to a network of benefit auctioneer colleagues across the country. So we started seeing in February and March, restrictions in place and size of events in place. And so when I knew, March 8th, I was already watching 3 virtual galas that had taken place on the West Coast. So I am learning 3 in one day. Yeah, wow. It was, but I probably have attended about 50 of them since March. And I just go, I learn, I observe best practices. I'm looking at the mobile bidding platform they're using. I'm looking at it from a guest experience, how easy, how hard. And so I'm using that to help these nonprofits who, in March, everyone was just panicked. Mm-hmm. It was this state of panic. And so I had to learn very quickly that number one, this can be done. And it's just learning how to, we keep getting better as we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done some, back in March, April, May, some of those events were turning around in 24 hours from when they decided. Wow. But look, they already had their food, their hotel, their auction items. They already had their AV. They could do that. Now we need more time to plan. So I don't want people to think, oh, well, they did it in 2 days back in March. Well, we're not in March now.
Yeah.
So the quickest one I've done is in 18 days.
18 days. Wow. That's still very quick for any kind of event.
We were zooming. We were really moving to, 4 months lead time.
Mm-hmm.
And, but that's still less than when you're planning an in-person event. So instead of putting all that efforts into the hotel a year out, 18 months out, now I'm saying get with your live stream team and, your fundraising host, someone that's really going to help guide you through the process. But the one thing I really like about the virtual events, you can do a shorter program. That is my biggest thing. When the first ones I saw, some of them were an hour and a half long.
Mm-hmm.
Now that takes a lot to, maybe in April and May, you can keep people engaged for an hour and a half.
But Zoom fatigue, man, Zoom fatigue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now you can do a shorter program, which I'm saying, can you do it in 30, 45 minutes? An hour if you absolutely have to. And maybe take some things that you would have put in your program and put them in your virtual lobby, which I love the virtual lobby because it's a way for you to start talking about your mission, tell people how to bid, introduce people around. We can check in on those Zoom parties that we're going to be doing for Carolyn's group. And I think we're going to do 4 or 5 that we're going to be popping in and out of throughout the night, which I'm really looking forward to that. But it's looking at, I think what I'm seeing people doing is when they look at what areas of fundraising do they want to keep, that everyone is still doing a paddle raise, raise the paddle, fund a cause, fund a need, but they're just asking for those straight donations. Silent auctions are doing actually better than live auctions sometimes.
Oh.
Yes, that has been the biggest shift. And if you are doing a live auction, you got to think about doing it a little bit differently than possibly the traditional bid calling style. And but it depends also on the mobile bidding platform you're going to use.
100%. And I think specific to that, actually, one thing for everybody to keep in mind if you are planning on doing anything live that requires an auctioneer or some sort of calling, one of the major challenges that we all faced when we were starting to plan the Imagine Away Gala was latency, or that delay. From that moment of you saying something to the moment of somebody at home hearing it. How long is that delay? Therefore, how long does it take for your graphics to travel from a different machine? How long does your voice take to travel from a different machine? Do they match up exactly right? So if we go 3, 2, 1, closed, is everything closing at the same time? All of these things need to be tested. So those are the kinds of very technical questions that we need to be asking as we're exploring those platforms. But I think overall, it's an interesting observation, Gail, of how the different traditional facets of a gala night, insofar as silent versus live versus paddles up versus last hero, how those have shifted in priorities, and therefore how you would plan what specific items might be included in each of those, for example. So again, there's no one package fits all by any stretch of the imagination. It's all about, again, starting from those objectives and then figuring out where you want to get to, and then developing the strategies and the steps around that in order to make sure that you're taking the right steps forward. And I think exactly what you were saying before, Gail, of people were very forgiving very early on because it happened so quickly. But now with the amount of Zoom fatigue that is out there, it's going to continue, and people are going to get tired of even the same format of Gala over and over and over again, because it is now a few months in. They've been to maybe one, maybe two, probably not as many as you, Gail, but you know,
Not 50.
Not 50. I mean,
Strange.
who's attending 50 galas? But Gail's done all of that research for you. So if you need somebody, exactly, she's done all the research for you.
That's right.
But yeah, we need to continually innovate, and that's, I think, what we've seen. We've seen everything be shaken up, and now we're seeing the cream rise to the top. And I think that cream's got to shift somehow. We've got to get some sprinkles on that cream or something, because now we need to start to develop that even further so that it continues to be engaging.
Well, and if I could say, you know,
Please.
the difference is, instead of looking at, you know, 350, 400 bidder numbers with people putting their paddles up in the air, I'm now looking at 3 monitors in front of me. And the thing I love about Imagine Away's crowd is they have such loyal donors. And they are the most competitive group I think I've ever seen. But it's going to be so fun checking in on them and watching a chat box, you know, because I think that is also, that's, you know, one of those other things of, and I found that some groups love it. Other groups, like, we don't want the chat box on. So you have to know your audience if you think it's going to be distracting. For Carolyn's group, oh, they're going to love it. They will love it.
Stoke that competition. That's what gets us.
Yes,
that's what gets us to our goals. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. But before we leave you, what is your last bit of practical advice? Any charities out there that are finding it a little bit difficult to pivot, or even, you know, agencies that are trying to help them, or anybody in this industry or anyone in this situation? What would be your last bit of advice for them? Carolyn, let's start with you.
I would say the first thing that comes to mind is do your research. Take the time, invest the time and energy in doing your research. Make sure that there are a lot of great options out there, but you've got to make sure it fits your organization in terms of the technology. Make sure you engage your partners and do it from the beginning, because it is such a significant shift that you need it's a huge collaborative team effort, and you need everybody together from the beginning to really make it work. So I think, you know, and then over communicate. That's going to be the other major thing, because it looks so different. So, you know, all of those things, whether you're communicating with your partners or you're communicating with your donors, those are the top 3 things I think are critical in this time frame.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gail, what have you got for everybody out there?
I'm going to say, you can do this. You can do this.
Woo-hoo!
And that here's what we do know about fundraising, that those groups who say, oh, we're not going to fundraise now, not during a pandemic. Well, those are the groups that may not survive. That's just, and that's been true of any market downturn over the years. You still have donors that want to give. They want to support you. Maybe not, some of them can't, but not everyone is affected by this. And you have to remember that. And they want to see you survive. And they know that your need is higher than ever. And I'm going to say, don't be afraid. It may not be perfect. There might be a glitch in the video. It might be a little bit of lag time, but I'm finding that people are so forgiving. Here's my new word that I learned the other night. We had a couple of technical glitches, a few, but the CEO was so thrilled with how we exceeded their goal, exceeded it, their wildest dream. This was the make a development director cry goal, and then exceeding it.
Wow.
And yes, so we did that, even with a few glitches. And CEO came on the phone as we're wrapping things up at the end, and he goes, you know what, though? It looked authentic. You looked authentic up there, and that you had a little glitch and you fixed it and you moved on. So that is my word. Look authentic.
Look authentic. I like it. It's kind of like when Jamie Oliver calls things caramelized instead of burnt.
Yes.
That's perfect.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for your time, for your energy. Thank you so much for giving of yourselves to raise money for causes. We need more people like you in the world. And I think the one silver lining that I've seen out of this is that people want to help and they want to connect more. And like you said, Carolyn, at the beginning, the objectives haven't changed. And what you were just saying then, Gail, of not wanting to fundraise in this environment, your objectives haven't changed. You are there to help. You are there as a charity for a specific purpose. So thank you to everybody out there who is tuning in, who is doing good out in the world. If you would like to support Imagine a Way, please check out their Facebook page. Their gala is coming up very soon after this event. And if you want to tune in and see what's going on, you absolutely can. There's no obligation, so please feel free, especially if you've been affected, as a lot of us have, with autism in your families or in your quarantines. And please, if you need any assistance with any technologies or any thoughts around how to frame any kind of fundraising, Gail's one of the best professionals out there, and she's going to help you get through. She's waded through 50 of these for you. Come on, give her a call.
There you go.
Exactly right.
So thank you both. Thank you so much for your time. We very much appreciate you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate
Thank you, Dave.
All right, guys. Make sure that you check out, if you want to interact with any of the people that you've seen, make sure you check out the chat box that's right next to here, or find them in the system. You can absolutely connect with them, learn more, give advice, get advice. This is all about creating a community. So check out all of the features that are on the platform, and we will see you very soon. Have a great afternoon.